I used to think loneliness was just an excuse, something people said when they wanted attention. Then she looked at me that morning, and I stopped laughing. The rain hadn't really stopped since dawn, and the whole shop smelled like damp cardboard and coffee grounds. Tuesdays were always slow at Martin's Auto, the kind of slow where time stretches and the sound of the clock starts to feel personal. I was wiping down a counter that didn't need wiping when she walked in, umbrella dripping, coat half buttoned, eyes focused on her phone like she was trying to disappear into it. She wasn't supposed to come to places like this, not someone who carried herself the way she did. Sharp, clean lines in her voice. A kind of poise that made everyone else feel like they'd forgotten something. But her car was idling out front, one headlight flickering, and she looked frustrated in a quiet way, like she didn't have the energy to be angry. "Is there someone who can look at my car?" she asked, setting her keys down. Her tone wasn't impatient. It was controlled, too controlled. The kind people use when they've had a long day and don't want anyone to know. I told her I'd check it myself. She hesitated, then gave a small nod, the kind that said fine, surprised me. Outside, the rain came down harder, flattening her hair against her cheek. I reached for her umbrella to hold it open while she unlocked the car door, but she stopped me, fingers brushing mine for half a second. Not sharp, not flirtatious, just aware. "I can manage," she said, soft but certain. Still, when a gust of wind flipped her umbrella inside out, she laughed, a quiet, genuine sound that cut through the rain like something fragile and warm. For a second, she wasn't that composed woman anymore. Just human. I found myself smiling, even though I didn't know why. While I checked the wiring under the hood, she stood nearby, arms crossed, watching the puddles gather at her shoes. Every now and then, I'd glance up, and she'd be looking at me like she wanted to ask something, but never did. When our eyes met, she always turned away first. Always. "You've got a bad relay," I said eventually, wiping my hands. "Shouldn't take long to fix." She nodded again. "That's good." "I have," she paused, searching for the right words. "I have time." Something about that line stayed with me. I have time. Not "I'm in a hurry or I'll come back later." Just time. Inside, I offered her coffee while I worked. She sat on the waiting bench, scrolling through her phone, though I could tell she wasn't reading anything. Her fingers moved, but her eyes were far away. I wanted to ask if everything was okay, but I didn't. I just handed her the cup, and she murmured a thank you without looking up. For a few minutes, the room was quiet except for the rain and the hum of the heater. It wasn't awkward, just full. Full of something I didn't have a name for yet. When I told her the car was ready, she smiled, polite, practiced, then, as she reached for the door, she said, almost absently, "Funny. You remind me of someone I used to know." She left before I could ask who. That night, I found myself replaying her words, the way her eyes lingered a moment too long before she turned away. And that's when I realized, maybe loneliness isn't about being alone. Maybe it's about being near someone, just for a moment, and knowing you won't stop thinking about them when they leave. She came back 3 days later. Said her headlight was flickering again, though I knew it wasn't. It was late afternoon, sun cutting through the dusty window like old gold. The shop smelled like metal and oil, the same as always, but when she walked in, it felt different. Softer somehow. Maybe it was her hair, tied up this time, or the faint trace of perfume that lingered behind her, not floral, not sweet, something quiet, like cedar. "You again," I said, trying to sound casual. "Unfortunately," she replied, setting her keys down. Her voice was calm, but her shoulders said otherwise. She watched as I opened the hood, standing closer than before. Not uncomfortably close, just enough that I could feel her presence in the air. She didn't fill the silence this time. Neither did I. The hum of the fluorescent lights did the talking. After a while, I said, "You know, your relay's fine. Maybe just a loose connection." "Loose," she echoed, almost to herself. Then she smiled, small, tired. "That sounds about right." It wasn't about the car. I think we both knew that. She looked older today. Not in the way people mean when they talk about age, but in the way her eyes carried something heavy. Something that wouldn't let her rest. She had a ring mark on her finger, faint but still there, and I caught myself wondering about it, about him. Whoever he was. "Long day?" I asked. She gave a short laugh. "A long few years." The way she said it, quiet, with a breath that trembled halfway through, made me stop pretending to work. I leaned on the hood and looked at her properly for the first time. She noticed. Turned her head slightly away, but not enough to hide the redness around her eyes. "I'm fine," she said quickly, smoothing her hair. "I didn't say you weren't." That made her laugh again, softer this time. "You're too young to sound that sure of yourself." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I've just met a lot of tired people." That shut her up for a moment. She looked at me like she wanted to say something honest, something real, then decided against it. Her hand brushed the counter, fingertips restless, tracing invisible shapes. When I handed her the receipt, our fingers touched again, just barely. Her hand was cold. She didn't pull away right away. "Thank you," she said, her voice a little unsteady. "For whatever this is." I could have asked what she meant, but I didn't. The moment was too delicate. Like touching glass and knowing it would break if you breathed wrong. She left without saying goodbye, and the shop felt too quiet after that, like even the air had followed her out. And as I watched her car disappear through the window, I realized I wasn't thinking about her car at all. I was thinking about that laugh, the tired, beautiful kind that hides 1,000 things you'll never get to know. It was the kind of rain that didn't stop for hours, the kind that blurred everything outside into a gray watercolor. She was sitting in the back office that night, waiting for a part delivery that never came. I was there too, finishing paperwork I wasn't really finishing. The shop was closed. Just the two of us and the hum of the vending machine. She had her coat draped over her chair, sleeves rolled, a pen resting between her fingers. Her hair was damp at the edges, sticking to her neck. She looked tired, but peaceful in a way that made the silence feel earned. "You don't have to stay," she said after a while, eyes still on the papers in front of her. "I don't mind," I said. "Besides, the storm doesn't seem like it's giving up." She smiled faintly. "You're too kind." Then, after a pause, "That's dangerous." I didn't know what she meant, or maybe I did. I just didn't want to. The clock ticked softly. I found myself watching the way she moved, how deliberate everything was. Every gesture controlled, every word considered. And yet, sometimes, she'd falter. Her hand would linger on the table a second too long, her breath catching mid-thought. Like something inside her was trying to escape. "You ever feel like you're just pretending to be fine?" I asked suddenly. Her pen stopped moving. "All the time," she said quietly. "But it gets easier if you don't think about it too much." There was a tremor in her voice, almost invisible, but there. A car passed outside, headlights flashing across her face. For a second, she looked almost younger. Or maybe just less guarded. She turned to me then, and our eyes met, not by accident this time. "I shouldn't be here this late," she said, but made no move to leave. "You shouldn't," I agreed. Neither of us moved. Her phone buzzed suddenly, sharp against the quiet. The sound made her flinch. She glanced at the screen, something unreadable flickered across her face, then silenced it without answering. Work? I asked. She shook her head. No. Just someone I used to care about. The air between us thickened. I wanted to ask, does he still care about you? But I didn't. It wasn't my place. Instead, I said, you look cold. She looked at me, curious, maybe even amused. That's your solution? Warm me up? Her tone was teasing, but her eyes weren't. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but before I could, thunder cracked outside, and the lights flickered, plunging us into a momentary darkness. When the lights came back, she was closer. I could feel her breath, warm and uneven. Neither of us spoke. Then she stepped back, slow, deliberate, like someone retreating from the edge of something dangerous. Good night, she said softly. It wasn't a goodbye. But it wasn't nothing either. And as the door closed behind her, I realized I'd started to fear the quiet, not because it was empty, but because it still sounded like her. It was a Thursday, late enough that the world outside felt paused. The storm had ended days ago, but the air still smelled like rain, heavy and clean. She stopped by the shop again, said she needed to check the brakes, but she didn't even park in a bay this time. She just stood by the counter, holding her keys like they were a reason to stay. I could tell something was different before she even spoke. There was a stillness in her, the kind that comes when someone's run out of excuses. You ever feel like you're waiting for something that's not supposed to happen? She asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. I set down the wrench I was pretending to use. All the time. She gave a small laugh, one that didn't reach her eyes. I thought so. We didn't move for a while. The clock ticked. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Somewhere in the back, water dripped from a leaky pipe. It all felt louder than it should have. Finally, she walked around the counter, slow, cautious, and stood near me. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel the warmth from her coat, smell the faint trace of coffee on her breath. This, whatever it is, she said, staring at the floor, it can't keep happening. I didn't know whether she meant the visits, or the silences, or the way we looked at each other like we were memorizing something. Nothing's happening, I said. Her eyes lifted, steady, unblinking. Exactly. The word hung there, sharp and sad. I wanted to say something, tell her that I thought about her too often, that her absence had started to feel like static in my chest, but the words stayed trapped somewhere behind my teeth. She looked around the room like she was searching for a way out. Then she sighed, rubbing her temple. You make it too easy to forget how old I am, she whispered. I don't think about it, I said. That's the problem, she murmured. Silence again. The kind that fills every corner until you can't breathe around it. She stepped closer, just one step, but it felt like more. Our reflections met faintly in the window, two blurred outlines, both standing too still. I should go, she said finally. You always say that, I replied, voice lower than I meant. Her eyes met mine. There was something raw there, something like fear, but also relief. Maybe because I never do, she said. For a moment, it felt like the world was holding its breath with us. Then she reached out, as if to touch my arm, stopped halfway, and let her hand fall instead. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything we didn't say. And when she finally turned to leave, she whispered without looking back, You make me remember what I was like before I stopped feeling brave. She didn't come around for almost 2 weeks. I told myself it didn't matter, that people get busy, that maybe the silence meant things were back to how they were supposed to be. But every night, when I'd lock up the shop, I'd catch myself glancing toward the street, just to see if her car was there. It never was. Then, one evening, I found something tucked under the counter. an envelope, plain, unaddressed, with my name written in small, careful handwriting. Hers. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there, staring at it like it might burn if I touched it. When I finally did, it wasn't a letter. Just a photograph. A younger version of her, maybe late 20s, standing next to a man in front of what looked like an old lake house. Her smile in the photo was different from the one I knew. Lighter. Real. On the back, in faint ink, was a date and 2 words, "He stayed." I didn't know what it meant, but it felt heavy in my hands. Later that night, she walked in. No warning. No car trouble this time. Just her, hair pulled back, wearing a gray sweater that looked softer than anything I'd ever seen her wear before. "I didn't mean for you to find that yet," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "So it was meant for me?" I asked. She hesitated. Eventually. She sat down on the bench near the door, elbows on her knees, eyes fixed on the floor. "He was the first person who ever made me feel seen," she said quietly. "And the last one I ever told I loved." "What happened?" Her lips pressed together. "I told him I'd wait. But I didn't." The way she said it, calm, without self-pity, felt worse than if she'd cried. "I thought I moved on," she continued. "But every time I talk to you, I feel like I'm standing in that house again, waiting for someone I already lost." Something inside me shifted, a strange mix of understanding and ache. "I'm not him," I said gently. "I know," she said, finally meeting my eyes. "That's what scares me." For a while, we didn't speak. Rain started up again outside, light this time, barely there. She reached for the photo on the counter, ran her thumb over it, and then handed it to me. "Keep it," she said. "Maybe it'll remind you not to wait for people like me." I wanted to say something, tell her she was wrong, that she didn't see what I saw when I looked at her, but she was already standing, already putting her coat on like she'd been preparing to leave all along. At the door, she paused, one hand on the handle. "You remind me of who I was before I forgot how to hope," she said softly. And then she was gone again. This time, I didn't look out the window. I just stood there, holding the photo, and realizing it wasn't her past haunting me anymore. It was mine. The next time I saw her, she didn't look like she was coming to fix anything. She just stood in the doorway, hands buried in her coat pockets, eyes soft but unreadable. It had been a month since that night, long enough for the ache to dull, not long enough to forget. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. The shop was half lit, the hum of a single lamp filling the silence between us. "I shouldn't be here," she said finally. "I know. But I am," she added, almost apologetic. I nodded. "Yeah." She took a few steps closer, stopping by the counter. "You kept the photo?" "Didn't seem right to throw it away," I said. Her eyes flicked to the edge of the workbench, where it sat tucked under the glass. She smiled faintly. "You really don't listen, do you?" "Not when people tell me to forget things." Something about that made her breath catch. She leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. The exhaustion in her face wasn't from work or time, it was the kind that comes from pretending not to feel something you've already felt too long. "I don't know what this is," she said quietly. "I keep trying to make sense of it, and I can't. Maybe it's not supposed to make sense." She shook her head, half smiling. "That sounds like something someone too young to know better would say." "Maybe," I said. "But it feels true." She looked down at her hands, the same hands I'd memorized without meaning to, and rubbed her thumb over the faint ring mark still ghosting her finger. "I thought I'd forgotten what it felt like to want to stay," she murmured. Her words hung in the air. I didn't move closer. I didn't have to. She glanced up, meeting my eyes, really meeting them this time. "You make me feel seen," she said softly. "And I don't know what to do with that." I swallowed, the quiet pressing around us. "Then don't do anything. Just stay." Her breath trembled, almost like she was laughing and breaking at the same time. Then she did something small, so small it nearly went unnoticed. She reached out and placed her hand over mine. No hesitation this time. Her palm was warm. The kind of warmth that doesn't ask for anything. We stood like that, not talking, not moving, the world narrowing down to the quiet rhythm of our breathing. There wasn't any promise between us, no confession, no clean ending. Just the truth, sitting there between two people who'd finally stopped pretending they didn't need to be understood. After a while, she whispered, "You'll forget me someday." "Maybe," I said. "But not tonight." She smiled then, the smallest, most human kind of smile, and leaned her forehead against mine, just long enough for the moment to settle into something real. When she finally left, I didn't follow. I didn't have to. The silence she left behind wasn't empty anymore. It felt like the sound of something ending gently, exactly the way it was meant to. It's strange how some people never really leave, even when they do. The shop looks the same now. The same hum of the lights, the same scent of oil and rain-soaked concrete. But it's quieter in a way that feels earned. Like something has settled. Like I finally stopped waiting for the door to open again. It's been months since I last saw her. No messages, no visits, no trace, except for the faint mark of her photo still pressed beneath the glass on the counter. I never took it out. I just let it fade there, soft and sun-worn, a reminder that not everything we keep is meant to stay bright. Sometimes, when a customer walks in, I still catch myself glancing up too fast, expecting that calm voice, that hesitant smile. And every time I realize it's not her, there's this small, almost invisible ache. Not sharp anymore. Just familiar. I used to think love was supposed to be clear, two people choosing each other, simple as that. But she taught me it's quieter than that. Sometimes love is just two people finding a space where they don't have to explain themselves. Sometimes it's the stillness before goodbye that says more than any confession could. She once told me she'd forgotten how to hope. I think about that a lot. Maybe that's what this whole thing was, two people reminding each other what it felt like to hope again, even if just for a moment. Even if it couldn't last. And me, I'd changed too. I don't fill the silence as much anymore. I don't rush to fix what's broken just because I can. Some things aren't meant to be repaired, only understood. People ask me sometimes if I ever got over her. I never know how to answer that. Over feels like the wrong direction. It wasn't something to climb past, it was something to carry, lightly, carefully, until it just became part of who I am. There's a kind of peace in that. A few weeks ago, I found myself standing outside her old office building. I don't know why. Maybe habit. Maybe memory. I didn't go in. I just stood there in the late afternoon light, watching people hurry past, and I caught myself smiling, because for the first time, I realized I wasn't lonely. I understood what she'd meant that night, when she said she didn't know what to do with being seen. It wasn't about love, not really. It was about being known, and then letting go anyway. So no, I don't think of her as someone who left. I think of her as someone who taught me how to stay, even when staying means standing still. And if this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?